right? I actually had 3 awkward conversations last year. 2 of them went well and have strengthened the friendships. 1 has ended in the friendship fading, and that's fine.
So were there 3 besides the one you and I had?
Yeah, there was. Yeah,
so I had a lot of awkward conversations last year.
Yeah, because I'm an advocate for it, right? I'm like,
you don't
feeling
practice what you preach over there. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have many friends? Would you say those are quality friendships? As human beings, we need social interaction to stay healthy. And the COVID-19 pandemic and the isolation it has created for many has really illustrated how harmful loneliness can be. On today's show, we'll be talking about this topic, specifically referencing an article written in The Conversation titled, "Why Do We Find Making New Friends So Hard as Adults?" It's currently rated as the top story at The Conversation with over 250,000 reads and has been picked up by a major media outlet in Australia. Before we introduce our topics, I'll throw it over to Amanda for our formal introduction.
All right. Welcome to Settling is Not an Option. I'm Amanda Stanhope, and I'm here with my amazing friend, Adam Nebbs. And if you enjoy listening to curious-minded people having interesting conversations, then you're in the right place. Our aim is to confront assumptions, challenge expectations, and encourage as many people as we can to stop living for an unfulfilling life. To support the show, you can follow us on Spotify, Amazon Music, or YouTube. And if you're so inclined, you can find a link to coffee in the description where you can go donate as little as $1 to us to help keep the show going. So with that being said, I'll turn it back over to Adam to introduce the topics that we're going to be talking about.
Awesome. Thank you. Firstly, great new introduction. Amanda wrote that up. I already just saw it like 5 minutes before she read it. But yeah, I like it a lot more.
It was time for a new one. Yeah.
It was.
The show's changed a little since the purpose has changed a little from when we first started it. So yeah.
Yeah. I think it was Kerry, a guest, and we haven't published this episode yet, but she asked us last week who our audience was. So I think it forced us to kind of sit down and be like, who is our audience? We just like talking to each other.
I don't know. Whoever will listen.
Okay, we're like, oh yeah, that is the thing, isn't it? That you should have a demographic. But excellent. Now, we did have a plan to use our microphones today, but I've just learned, and this is the joys of, kind of podcasting, I guess. I got a condenser microphone. People out there, probably know about this, but you also need like a little kind of separate box that plugs into your laptop to use it. So we were going to use the microphones. Amanda's actually got her microphone there with her today. It's a fancy one. Look at that.
We're getting more professional.
Yeah, very professional. So yeah, hopefully in the next couple of weeks I'll have this other microphone out. So just letting you guys know, we're investing in this podcast.
Yes.
So feel free to, as Amanda said, donate to us on coffee because we'll get even more shiny.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we've got 3 topics we want to touch on today. So as I said, we're going to be focusing on this article in The Conversation. Great article. I saw it on LinkedIn. And I've since connected with the author, who seems to be really esteemed and interesting. So we'll share that in the show notes. But the 3 topics that we want to touch on is lack of trust, lack of time, and how to make new friends. So the first 2 will be really just touching on some research that was done about why adults struggle to make new friends. But then I thought it would be good to kind of wrap up, well, how do you make new friends? Because, we don't want to end on a bit of a sad note. We're all thinking, it's really hard to make friends. How can we make this practical?
Yeah.
So the first section was lack of trust. And when researchers interviewed adults about making friends in a recent study, the most important challenge cited was lack of trust. That is, people found it harder to put their trust in someone new and fully invest in them as a friend compared to when they were younger. And why do we think that is? Well, the article suggests that it may be because we have more self-awareness than we did as children. So I would certainly agree on this. I'd say we definitely have a deeper frame of reference. We're a lot more cautious. For me, I've certainly spent a few years now trying to understand myself and what I want from my friendships. Mm-hmm. So I've let a lot of friends go. Last year was almost like a friend culling session. I was like, no, you're not in my circle anymore. And I had this joke with a couple of other friends that I've since, spent a lot more time with. When I first met them, I was in a coffee shop with one of my friends who I hang out with now every week. And I said to her, I was like, look, I'm actually recruiting friends at the moment. And I said, I think that you would be a good candidate. And she just started laughing. I said, because I just feel that you're like me. You're a little different and stuff.
Yeah.
And I said, so, today I'm going to be interviewing you for the role as my friend. And it's, it sounds absurd, but it's worked well. I've got 100% strike rate with these two new friends I've made. Yeah. But, that's the big thing for me is, I removed some toxic friendships that I just had there, and I felt like I needed to keep those people in my life because we'd known each other and it was a sense of loyalty and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But they were toxic friendships, and it was getting rid of those friends, which may sound harsh, but getting rid of those friends opened up the opportunity for me to make new friends. Yeah. And I think as well, by getting rid of those toxic friendships, I was a lot less stressed, and that probably came across to people that I was interacting with. So I just wondered, Amanda, have you had any kind of similar journeys in your friendships over the past couple of years?
Yeah, for sure. Because I think part of it too, and this sounds like conceited or kind of arrogant to say, but I don't mean it that way. It's just that it's the way it is that, so it's been 3 years, well, almost 3 years since I quit my full-time job and just started off doing my own thing with my blog and my website and everything, and then started doing this. And so even before that, I was on a personal growth journey, or whatever you want to call it. But that's when I really kicked into high gear, and people really started noticing changes in me, and well, just because there was that outward change where I was doing something different and taking that big risk, which it surprised a lot of people because I am an accountant by trade and we're not known for being risk takers. And so, that surprised a lot of people. And then just all the growth I've had, I've had several people who were like, oh, well, you've changed and blah, blah, blah. Like it was a bad thing. And there was one particular person who I had that interaction with that we haven't talked in I don't know, at least 2 years, maybe more going on 3. It's whatever. We haven't talked in a long time, and we had been friends for over 20 years. But the arrogant, conceited part is that that's what happens when you do start becoming, I say, a better person. That's not the right word, but when you start becoming clearer about what you want out of life, and you start making positive changes in your life, and your trajectory, I'm not good at saying that word, trajectory of your life starts going up. The people who are stagnant or who's staying in the same place, sometimes they're really threatened by that. And not only, I think it makes them kind of feel bad about themselves, but I also feel like that's not all of it. I think they also feel like they've lost you, like they don't know you anymore. And I think that's part of it, is they don't recognize you anymore and they don't know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
So I've definitely had that. And I guess maybe that's part of the trust, because now that I think about that, because you said that was the biggest hindrance to making new friends, was that it's hard to trust people. And I guess that makes sense now that I'm saying that, because this person, we've been friends for over 20 years. She kind of has an idea of who I am and what to expect from me. Maybe I did break that trust with her because now she doesn't know what to expect from me, and I never looked at it that way.
That's interesting. It makes me always think of that, I don't know, that covert contract thing we talked about ages ago.
Yes.
So it's almost like...
so can you explain what that was a little bit?
Yeah, so we had an episode ages ago now, so we'll put the... a link to it in the show notes. But it was basically about these contracts that, and this particular author was talking about in relationships, romantic relationships, and how we write these contracts that, these unwritten contracts that we never share with the other person. And if they don't meet that contract, we start to resent them and get really frustrated. And meanwhile, they're sitting there thinking, hold on, I don't understand why you're angry at me, And then you just word vomit at them and say, because of all these issues, and this person's sitting there going, sorry, what? I don't understand what the issue is here. And I feel like it's the same in friendships, because it's almost in a way like, okay, I've signed a contract with Amanda now, and Amanda will stay the way she is forever. And if she
Right.
changes, I'm going to be really mad at her because she signed a contract that said
Yeah.
she wouldn't change. So maybe there's that. Maybe it flows into, just normal everyday friendships as well. And
Mhm.
that is why people kind of fall out of your circle because they're like, oh, I don't know who you are. I can't trust you. You changed without consulting me
Yeah.
about this change. You should have amended the contract. Like,
Right. Well, and that's a good way to look at it because I did not look at it at the time. I didn't look at it that way. And I didn't look at it that way until just honestly just now. Like maybe that would be a better way to handle the situation if it were to happen again, where someone's trying to shut you out instead of the other way around. Like you're not shutting them out, they're shutting you out. Is to look at that part of it. Is that maybe that's why is they just don't. And if you had that honest conversation about it, maybe you would come to realize that you still wanted to continue that friendship.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'd say if I think about the trust part, there were two people that I don't really speak to anymore.
Yeah.
And they broke my trust.
Okay.
Now, it's interesting because I'll talk about this in the third segment, but I always think there's an opportunity to sit down and have a really honest conversation with somebody, right? So I could choose to have a conversation with both of these people and say, hey, you broke my trust. I never confronted you about it, but that really hurt me. And that's why I've gravitated away from you. Now, I've thought about that, but I also look at this friendship and think, well, what am I getting from this friendship?
Yeah.
I didn't really get a lot from it anyways. It was quite a superficial relationship. It didn't really add a lot of value to my life, and that may sound harsh. There may be people there thinking, well, why do you have to get something from your friendship? But I think you need to.
You do because you put energy into it.
You do.
You only have so much time in a day. So if you're going to give time to someone, you should get something out of it.
Yeah. So
yeah.
These two people, I thought, no, I don't like. Because having an honest conversation is difficult. Amanda and I have had one ages ago, and it was uncomfortable. And I'll talk about two other ones I had later. Both very uncomfortable because they're never nice to have to say, "Hey, I didn't like that thing."
Right.
And then you'll probably hash it out because there'll be, one person's view and then the other view, and it'll be a bit awkward at first because we're human beings, and that's what happens. But I can guarantee, if the friendship's good, you'll come out the other side and be like, I'm so glad we had that conversation.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, with these two that broke my trust, I looked at that and thought, look, I'm going to have to exert a lot of energy to have this awkward conversation, and I just weigh up all of the information, and I don't think it's worth my energy. So I'm just happy to let them go. So I think that's the other thing too, is just because maybe as an adult you don't have as many friends as you did as a kid, don't feel that you have to hang on to these relationships, because of fear of, oh no, I'm going to be alone. If you make that informed judgment call to say, look, I am annoyed about something, but I really don't think it's worth my time and effort to fight for this friendship, let it go and see what happens. You might have something good come out the other side, in terms of another friendship.
For sure.
But I had one kind of other question for you. So, what do you value most in friendships, now? So even looking at the last 3 or 4 years.
Well, I would say trust, obviously, but I think trust is a big thing for me just in general. But I think more specifically, trusting that they will be there for me when I need them. And again, that sounds selfish, but that's what a friend is at the end of the day. Yeah. I mean, that's why you have friends and family, so that when something happens to you, you have people to turn to. Now, well, there's different levels of friends. I guess I'm talking about people that are like in my inner circle friends, which there's only a few. I mean, but I guess that's what I'm thinking of as a friend. Like if it's just a superficial friendship, then I would just want someone who's fun to talk to and goofy and doesn't take themselves too seriously. And I guess I would want those things in both types of friends, because that's important to me too. Is like somebody who you can have a good time with and who can help you. I don't know. To me too, it's someone who brings out the best in you or brings out the part of you that you like. I guess that's because that now I'm talking that through. When I met my husband, Dan, I remember telling my mom that was one of the things I liked most about Dan. It was that he made me like who I was. And I didn't always like who I was when I was with my ex-husband. And I'm like, I like who I am when I'm with him. And because he brings out a good side of, or the best parts of me. And so I think a good friend would do that as well.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that. I feel the same about my fiance Nat as well. That I'd say I'd be in the same category as you. I didn't necessarily like myself, but like before I was with Nat, but Nat has really made me come to realize, particularly my goofy side. And we are just goofy at times. We just sit there going, wow, like if people watched us right now, they'd be like, these two are weird, but we're having fun.
Well, yeah.
So I think
that is a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Like, I guess it's kind of, and we'll talk about this. We're going to do an episode hopefully next week on Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson, two of our faves. And they talk about a sense of play. So I think that's a new concept for me. I've heard about it a little bit, but not in the way these guys talk about it. But I think that's it. An ability to be able to sit down, have a good conversation, playful conversation.
Yes.
And, that's like the adult form of kind of as you were kids, just acting out and being silly and having fun. So, yeah, that's a good quality to have, I think.
So what are your top qualities then?
I'd say the same.
And these people you've been interviewing for the position, what?
Well, what I like
on their resume.
Authenticity is big. I like people because there's just so many people out there that are just bullshit, in my opinion. Like, just I look at them and I think you are so fake, and you've probably had your mask on or your persona, whatever you want to call it. You've had your persona on for so long, you don't even know who you really are.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think maybe it's because, I think one of my strengths is I really focus and analyze people really closely. So I'm just at that point now I can really go and tell when somebody's being sincere or not. Okay. And both these people that I've recruited to my friendship group are so sincere, just like vulnerable, right? Have just presented vulnerability to me really quickly. And I just liked it. I was like, wow, thank you for being so raw and honest with me. And then it just, I don't know, I mirrored that behavior and I was as equally raw and honest with them. And it just carved out these really good friendships with people that I've had so much fun with. Yeah. And it's really important. We'll talk about lack of time in the next segment. There's somebody I'm catching up with next week, and I'm so excited to hang out with her because we had a coffee and we sat there and had a big, long chat because we'd caught up in like a few kind of meeting settings at Menzies, which is the place where I study. But we went out for a coffee, and I really enjoyed the catch up, like to the point I got in the car and it was like, being a kid again, being like, that was such a cool friendship. I really want to go and like hang out with them again. But, and, I'm going to ask her when we catch up next week, did you think that was a really cool catch up or not? Like, anyways, but, it was a case where I needed to make that time. I kept putting it on the back burner, being like, oh, I've got so much on. Yeah. But then I thought, no, that was an awesome, energizing catch up. I need to make time for that, and reached out, and she was like, yeah, like I was meaning to message you, let's catch up. So yeah, I think authenticity is a big one to add into the mix for me. That's true. I just want to see the real you. I don't want to see the bullshit version that you present at work, but I also can appreciate that a lot of people would have that bullshit version because because the world is full of people feeling the need to put that face on, and they probably don't trust me enough to show me the real them. So I probably got to have a bit of compassion for them too, I guess.
Well, of course, yeah. But I think in your case too, because if you really did say to them that you were interviewing them for the job, which I believe you did say that.
Yeah, I did.
that immediately makes you vulnerable because you could come off as a real jackass saying that. So, I mean, you could, depending on how it went. So you made yourself very vulnerable, right?
Yeah, true.
Them be more vulnerable. And I know we're going to talk about vulnerability later, I think.
Yeah.
So I won't go
so into that. You should try it. Give it a go. Just
God.
I mean, I think,
I
yeah,
don't
it
know
has
if I
to
had
come,
the guts to do that.
it has to be with a certain audience, or I think it could go down really weird. But
Yeah.
anyways, it's
Yes.
worked out for me so far.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, we'll move to the next segment,
Yeah.
which is lack of time. So, research tells us that lack of time is a significant reason why a lot of us find it hard to make friends as adults. In fact, the article estimates that to move from acquaintance to casual friend takes approximately 50 hours, and to move from acquaintance to close friend, you need 200 hours of contact. Now, obviously, as adults, that can be a struggle if you have work, have kids, and other commitments to consider. What's also important is the article says that those hours need to be quality and that the professional interactions we have at work don't usually result in friendship creation. And I think this is a good point as well, is, I found as we get older, there's so many distractions. And we only have so much energy really that you can invest. And sometimes that can cause you to hold back from organizing a social catch up, like I mentioned before.
Right.
So for me, I've really learned to push through those barriers a lot. And an example I want to give is something I shared with Amanda last week, right? So I got off a chat that I had with Amanda and I just felt really energized, even though that morning I'd woken up and I felt like crap. And it's so funny because this will happen a lot, whereas I'll go, I've had a rough week, my energy's low, I'm not feeling good, and I'm like, can't be bothered doing the podcast, or I can't be bothered. And every single time I push through that resistance because I walk out of the conversation and I feel energized. And I'm like, so I just messaged Amanda last week and I was like, thanks for being an energizer. I don't have a lot of energizers or friends that can do that consistently. So I appreciated it. And that's why I think it's important to push through that, because it is hard sometimes if you've had a rough week. So just wanted to get your thoughts on that as well, Amanda, in terms of whether you've had similar things in a friendship capacity that have been a barrier.
Well, for sure. And this is a thing, and I don't know if it's even lack of time, but let's call it lack of commitment. Let's put it that way, because, all right, so I'm definitely an introvert, even though maybe people watching this wouldn't believe that, but I am definitely an introvert. All my close circle of friends, all introverts. We're all accountants. So like all my three
not risk takers.
My three closest girlfriends are all accountants. So anyways, so you can tell where I make my friends, obviously, but we are all the same, where like we want to go out and we know once we get there it'll be fine and we'll have a great time. But we're like, but maybe I'm not going to feel like going, like it's Monday. Maybe I'm not going to feel like going out on Saturday. I don't know if I want to make plans because maybe I won't feel like it. So it's not even that we don't have the time, but it's that, I don't know, that, like you said, there's this resistance, which is stupid because we all talk about it, because we all laugh about it, because we are all the same way and we all know we love spending time together, and once we're together we're going to have a great time. It's like, why do we resist it? I don't know, but that's just because we're introverted. So I think, so my point is, the time is a resistant, or part of the resistance is it making the time, but also just, I think that's the difference too. We got different people. They're just wired different. Like an extrovert would not be like that at all. Whereas introverts have a little harder time getting out there. And partly because we like spending time by ourselves. So, but yeah, and it is harder. You have people at different stages of life. Like, I fell into this weird mix within our friend group. Is a weird mix where, like, my one friend has older kids, and then my daughter was quite a bit younger. Then my one friend doesn't have any children. Another friend has just a stepson that, came into her life when he was older. And so it's like, we were never all on the same page at the same time. And so I think that makes it more difficult too, sometimes, to find time, because we all have different things going on in our lives. We're all kind of on different schedules with all that going on. So that's piece of it.
I think that's a good point as well. Like, sometimes when you're like organizing, especially group catch-ups, like I'll find that, so I can think of two of my really good mates. They both have 2 kids each. I've got obviously my daughter, shared care of my daughter. So it's a lot easier for me. I'm a lot more flexible, especially with my study. Plus, both of them work. One's a police officer, so he's got weird shifts all the time. My other friend's studying on top of working. So when and when I reach out to those guys, it usually results in, somebody's not ready and it's back and forth. And I think it comes back to that thing that we talked about with resistance. It's perseverance, right? It's like I could go, well, I've tried to organize a catch up. First one failed, second one failed. No, I'm done. Can't be bothered.
Yeah, true.
And that's, I think, a recipe of that friendship or those friendships fading. But I'll persevere. But one of the jokes that we had of that group is usually I'll be the one who initiates a catch up. I'll be like, right, it's been 3 months. We need to catch up. Oh, okay. Thanks for keeping me accountable.
I'm always the initiator. So yes, I know.
And that's okay. Like sometimes like
I know that's my role. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. That's fine. I'll pick the venue and usually it goes down well. And we always have fun. It's quite often one of my friends will be like, oh man, I'm so glad we caught up. It was a really good catch up. So I think that's an important thing too, from a time point of view, is you will come up against barriers. People will have different schedules, as Amanda said. I think you've just got to be like, well, how important is this friendship? If I look back on the last 5 catch-ups, were they good? Yeah, I felt really energized. I know we get along. Maybe I've forgotten how good that friendship is. Okay, let's persevere and organize the time, because you're guaranteed you'll walk away and it will be good. So again, I think there's a little bit of work you've got to do mentally in pushing through those barriers, because the barriers are always going to be there. I think they're resistance.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yep.
Yeah. So that's all I really had to say on lack of time. I don't think there was really anything else I had. It's a pretty simple one. Yep. So did you have anything to add, or should we move to number 3?
No, we're good. Yep.
So number 3 is about how to make new friends. So I'll talk through the 3 suggestions they had in this. So the author suggests that you should invest 10 minutes a day maintaining existing friendships or building new ones. So that could be sending a text, forwarding a meme, or giving someone a call. So I might just pause on that first one, because I've got a group with 2 of my really good friends, and we call it the Best of Shit Talkers 2021. Well, it's been upgraded now to the Best of Shit Talkers 2022.
I was going to say you're back in last year still.
Well, we had to update it, but that's all we do. We just talk shit.
Okay.
Like, to the point where, somebody will say, Billie Eilish, do you think she's under or overrated? And then we'll just give our commentary on that. Or we'll send a meme, just a funny meme of something. And that just continues. Now, I've been a bit slack, and that's kind of gone quiet the last few days, so I probably need to contribute. But that's a great way of
that's awesome. I like that.
maintaining that relationship, and then we catch up, and it's like, oh, how funny was that thing? Yeah, it was good. So that's all it really takes. That friendship kind of thing keeps nurturing itself. And I think that's an easy way of doing it.
That's true. And it just lets people know you're thinking about them.
Yeah. It doesn't need to be like a serious catch up or a phone call or whatever. Like, use the technology that you've got. Do you have anything similar like that with your accountant friends?
Not really consistently. We do sometimes do things like that. Yes. But it's definitely not consistent. But like, we'll see something funny. Okay. So here's one I did the other day. I was in the mall with my daughter, and she was using the restroom. So I'm waiting for her. And this lady was like standing up against the wall, flossing her teeth. So I had like right away, I'm like, oh my gosh, if there's one friend of mine, I'm like, oh, she will get such a kick out of this. So I texted her right away. I'm like, I am watching this woman flossing her teeth. Like, we do stuff like that when we just run across something funny that makes us think of the other person. And I think that helps. Like you said, I never really thought about it that much until just now, but it does make sense that even that's all it really takes, especially with us introverts. We don't need to have an hour-long conversation. Just like, okay, cool, this is funny. Amanda's thinking about me, Yeah, that's all it takes, probably. Yeah.
So that's it. I think the first suggestion is a good one.
Yeah.
10 minutes a day. And it doesn't need to be huge. Just send a text message, I'm thinking of you, or I saw this funny thing and made me think of you. It just keeps that relationship going. And it could be the same thing if you're trying to form a new one. It could be you make an effort, just to maybe communicate with somebody or something like that. Another example I had was, and this could be quite relevant, I think, for any of the men out there, right? And I'm going to reference the OC in here in a second. But Have you seen the OC?
No.
Quality show. See, watch the OC over Gilmore Girls any day.
No way. Gilmore Girls rules.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Best show ever.
It's no good. It's no good. So for a while, I've been going to the same coffee shop, right?
Yeah.
And there's a guy there, one of the baristas, such a cool guy. And every time we'd go in there, we'd have a good long chat about shows and movies.
Yeah.
And I just always got along with this guy so well. And anyway, so I said to my partner, I was like, I really want to hang out with this guy. He's cool. And I was like, but how do you ask a guy out? I was like, I want to just, I was like, it's just weird. Now, in the OC, one of the lead characters, Sandy Cohen, has the same issue. He's like, there's a guy in his office that he really wants to invite out because he needs more friends. And he's like saying to his wife, I don't know how to do this. Like, that's weird. Like, he'll think I'm hitting on him or something. And I had the same issue with this guy that I was like, how do you introduce in the conversation? Like, hey, man, can I get your number? Like, because I was worried that he'd be like, why do you want my number? Like, what? I'm not. So anyways, that's a silly assumption to have, but it's still one I'm sure that others deal with. Yeah. And one day I just did it. I was like, man, we should catch up for a beer. Can I grab your number? And he's like, yeah, sure. And it was fine. There was no weirdness there. Right. But again, that was a case where it's like, that was investing 10 minutes each time I go to the coffee shop, having a chat to him, eventually plucked up the courage to go, well, let's see if we can catch up. We still haven't caught up for that beer. It's been a long time now, but whatever, we can do that. But you know what I mean? Like, that's the importance. 10 minutes, just dedicate that time. So the second suggestion is making sure you spend time in person with a friend, and that make sure that time is quality. So when you're with somebody at the pub, put your phone away. Don't sit there, like really engage and be present. And we've talked about that with lots of things, not just friendships, but be present. Like, it's important. And the third one is my favorite. We've talked about this a bit, which is leaning into your vulnerability. And I think this would be a big hurdle for a lot of us. But this is how you build trust. So that first thing that we all talked about as being the biggest hurdle. And it may sound a little scary, but at the end of the day, you don't have to rush into sharing your deepest, darkest secrets. Some of us might feel comfortable once someone's done that with us, but you can just start slow. But keep in mind, until someone really gets to know the real you, they're just going to be scratching the surface of that persona you put on. So they're not going to be able to form that quality relationship. So take the time to be vulnerable. And I might just chuck two anecdotes there before I throw to Amanda. So I said at the start of the show, I had, two awkward conversations with people, right? I actually had 3 awkward conversations last year. 2 of them went well and have strengthened the friendships. One has ended in the friendship fading, and that's fine.
So were there 3 besides the one you and I had?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, so
I had a lot of awkward conversations last year.
Yeah, because I'm an advocate for it, right? I'm like,
you don't
feeling
practice what you preach over there. That's
exactly. It's important. But with one of the friendships, I didn't like an interaction that I had. It was uncomfortable for me. I didn't understand it, and I sat there resenting that person for a while, and I was angry, and it was chewing me up. And I was like, "What am I doing? I'm a grown up. I'm gonna invite this person to the pub, and I'm gonna have a chat." And we had a chat, and it was uncomfortable as hell. And after that initial conversation, we didn't talk for a little while, and I worried that the friendship had gone. I was like, "Oh, really? Oh, that sucks." But anyways, we're fine. We get along really well, and we know our boundaries. We came to realize that we were spending way too much time together. Like we hit it off so well that we were hanging out like 3-4 times a week. That's too much. Yeah. And we started to run out of things to talk about. And I think we started to get on each other's nerves a bit, which resulted in this awkwardness. But anyways, it was good. I sat down and I was like, here's how I feel. Tell me your thoughts. We hashed it out. and we were good. Same happened with another one of my friends. There was something that she did which made me feel like my trust had been broken. We discussed it. I could put it in context, and we came out the other side, and it was fine. Now, that was a case, right, where I felt initially that my trust had been broken.
Right.
But I could look at the situation and the person, and I was like, no, I'm willing to let that one go. I don't think it was like a clear, hey, I'm trying to break your trust like others have. And so the friendship moved forward. And another one was one where I had a really, people would be like, geez, Adam, like, what is going on with your life?
Like, what's up with this guy?
But I had another friend that we had a clash at the pub. It's always at the pub. It's
Of
an
course.
Australian thing. Maybe alcohol is the issue here.
That could be part of, but the little truth serum or whatever.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But, we had a clash, a difference of opinion. Now, I tried to follow suit with the other friendship examples I've just mentioned and said, let's sit down and talk about this. And it didn't work. If anything, it just fueled the fire and caused more conflict. And since then, we haven't really spoken. Now, I put that thing to bed. I'm happy about it. Again, I just don't think it was a friendship that really needed to be pushed any further. So I was like, let's let it go. That's fine. So anyways, I've rabbited on a lot about my life. I might throw over to Amanda. Otherwise, I might lose a new friend. She might need to talk to me about this. But yeah, what's your thoughts on this? And have you had some similar examples?
Well, first, I think so like the last anecdote that you gave where the talk didn't go well. Well, there's your clue. That's not where I guess that's a good distinction of that's not an example where you want to keep being persistent. Because before you're talking about being persistent, right? Right now, okay, this isn't going well. You don't need to be persistent with that one. So just to be clear that you don't always have to be persistent.
That's a good point.
And so that's how I guess, is and you gave good examples before too of when to be persistent and why it was important to be persistent. But I think that was a great example of when not to be and just to let it go. But I don't know. I probably don't have as many awkward conversations.
Okay, it's just me.
But maybe I should. I don't know. I will say I do you probably wouldn't think this of me, but I do tend to avoid awkward conversations.
Okay.
Well,
I wouldn't think that of you. I think you're quite candid.
I am, but at the same time, I guess I probably do let things go too long sometimes that are bugging me without addressing them soon enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I know if I addressed them the people that are important to me would be okay and then would stick around. So I don't know why I don't address them, but I guess it's part of that vulnerability obviously comes into play with that. But I try to think if I had, besides you and I guess, well, here's another thing. I think for me, I find it's easier to have open and honest conversations sometimes with men than with women. Like it was easier to have one with you than with some of my girlfriends, although there's some that I can. But I remember in your show notes, there was something about how women, or in the article, like women had a harder time trusting other women.
Yes, they did. Sorry, I forgot to mention that.
No, I just was thinking back on that. And I think there's a lot of truth. And I was thinking back, and I think this comes into play with the vulnerability though. Because when I read that article, because that was outlined in the article and then it was in your show notes, but when I read that women have a hard time trusting other women, I'm like, yeah, we do. Where does that come from? And I really think who knows where I came up with this, but it goes back to the caveman days, I'm sure, or not even that far back, but it wasn't that long ago in history when women depended on men for everything, really. Like we would depend on men to make our houses, to bring us food, to provide everything we needed to survive. And there's only so many men around. So I think that the women were more competitive with each other because we had to have a man.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's where it stems from. And I think that's just so in our genes. You know, because people think these things just pass, like, oh, we don't live that way anymore, so that shouldn't be the case. But some of this stuff is just built in our genes, and
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't just change that quickly. So as I'm thinking about why I don't have vulnerable conversations sometimes with my girlfriends, maybe that's why. Maybe that's part of the reason, is there is that
Yeah.
there's that competiveness.
You're
You know,
still back in the cave
no, I'm
waiting
not
for the
competing
man.
with any of them for a man. Trust me.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There is something about that. You know, that you have to be better than the other woman. But I think men must
Yeah.
have that too.
Yeah, well,
Because
if I
they
think
have the
about
same
those,
where they would want to reproduce. So they have the opposite side of it.
I have to say, I found the vulnerable chat with my female friend was a lot easier than the vulnerable chat with my
Yeah.
male friend.
Right.
Because I don't know, I found like, it was just more uncomfortable for me, I guess. I don't know what it was. It was,
Yeah.
so there could be something there.
I
Maybe I
is
think it's
something
because
to that.
I think as guys as well, I think we'd all agree on this. Where our egos can get in the way sometimes. And one of the blocks for us as men, I think, which is why I don't think it's a shock to anyone that there's a lot of stats out there from Movember and things saying that men struggle to talk to men. Is that it's an egoic thing. For me to say, hey, I didn't like that thing. And for me to go, for the other person to say, oh, really? Oh, I'm sorry about that. Because your ego's like, no, you should stand up for yourself. And regardless of whether it was you did wrong that other person, you're a man and men are always right. So you need to say, no, I'm sorry, you're wrong in this instance. I am the superior man here. I think that still plays a role. Now, this friend of mine, when I say it was a less easy conversation than the other one, it was still a pretty good conversation. But that's because I think this is an example of a pretty woke man. I think somebody who's probably more willing to have that conversation.
Sure.
Whereas we've joked about the blokey blokes.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could have a conversation like that with one of these tough blokes who doesn't want to talk about it. Like who knows? So yeah, it's interesting.
Well, and I guess that when we were talking about being vulnerable too, so in thinking of a male conversation versus a female conversation, so like I'm super vulnerable with my friends about like personal things about me, and we're super vulnerable with each other about that, which I think men sometimes have a hard time being vulnerable even with those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
what I have a hard time being vulnerable with is about things about our relationship. Like our friendship, I don't always have those vulnerable conversations, but anything else, it's on the table. I mean, there's no secrets. So whatever, it's all a fair game.
Yeah.
But that takes time to build, like we talked about the trust thing. I mean, obviously that didn't start out that way. Everything was on the table. But so you, in the beginning though, you alluded to like talking about how to make friends. So I guess you've given a couple of examples of how to make friends, but it is difficult. Like I'm horrible at making friends. I'll just say that. But that's why all my friends are accountants, because they're all people that I worked with. And so that I was forced to spend time with them. And then eventually it turned into more. But besides you, like a really good friend, I haven't really made any in years.
Yeah.
Which sounds really bad, but I mean, I've had superficial friendships, but
they saying in the article 50 hours to make a casual friend, 200 for a close friend. I mean, that's a while, especially if they're all quality hours. But I mean, it is hard. I'd have to say, of course, people would make a lot of friends with work colleagues. But, in my experience, when I was at the bank, I had a lot of friends that I worked with. They weren't friends. We didn't really know that much about each other. It was all superficial. Let's go out and get on the booze, and that's about it. Like, we didn't really sit down and ever have, like, chats. And they weren't there for me. And in the end, I wasn't there for them, you know?
Right.
So that's why I think those working relationships you need to be mindful of. But yeah, I just think, you know, sometimes as the spiritual part of me says, sometimes people will just drop into your lap. Like,
True.
at the end of the day, when I messaged Amanda on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
I would have never thought that we'd be, you know, here over a year later, chatting every week, sometimes for a
No.
couple of hours each time, well, pretty consistently 2 hours each
Yeah.
time. I didn't think that, you know, I didn't go into that conversation going, I can't wait to make a friend. It was more, oh, I'm interested in the content you produce. Let's have a chat. But at the same time, I think I was ready. I'd open myself up to, you know, to making a friend, and here we are today producing what we do and chatting and stuff. So I think there's a level of where you can spiritually, the universe will send people to you, but then you also need to be proactive. You know, I think be courageous, be vulnerable. You know, like, hey, it's awkward to ask somebody for their phone number or to catch up. Yes, absolutely, but you've just got to say, well, do I want a friend? Do I want to be friends with this person? I've got to put myself out there. And maybe they'll say, no, you weirdo. I make coffees for you. I'm not going to go to the pub with you. Oh, okay. And yeah, that'd be hell awkward. And maybe I won't go back to the coffee shop, but I can walk away and say, at least I had the guts to ask him, you know, that's good. But I mean, people are pretty good for the most part. Like, if you're getting a good vibe from a conversation with someone, they probably are too. And they're probably going home going, yeah, I really wish we could catch up, you know? So you've got to be a bit courageous and use the outlets you've got. And if you don't have outlets, especially with COVID and working from home, again, you might need to be courageous and go, all right, I'm going to go and do some hobby. And in that hobby, I might meet somebody and then I can start forming up a friendship. But what I liked about this article the most was the fact that it had 250,000 reads. The conversation, for anyone who doesn't know, it's essentially like a consolidation of all this, all these like academic journal articles, and they put it into like a nice digestible article where they reference all of these papers, and it's really cool. But yeah, for that to be the top one and for it to be picked up by the ABC over here, it's because it's relevant to people. Like, there are people everywhere who are adults who are struggling to make friends. So I think that's it. Just understand you feel vulnerable, but clearly so does a whole heap of other folks.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You know, just don't feel that you're alone. Just go, okay, I'm vulnerable, but so are they. Let's give it a shot, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's all I had to say on that. Did you have anything else to add?
I don't think so. I think we're good. Yeah.
I think we covered that.
I think that's a good way to wrap it up. Or you have a last thought?
My last thought as well was just about, for anyone who doesn't know, because my friend the other day listened to the podcast and gave some really nice feedback about you as well, Amanda.
Oh,
and
cool.
She asked me, she was like, have you ever met Amanda? I'm like, nope.
No.
I said, we talk every week, but no, I've never met her. But yeah, that's another thing too, is, you know, Zoom has given us this great capability that I've never met Amanda in person, but, you know, we can still have a lot of the interactions that you would, you know, that you'd have face to face. So use the technology you have. But it's going to be a weird day, and we'll definitely have to publish an episode when we meet in person, because I'm not used to seeing Amanda's legs. According to me, she doesn't even have legs. She's just this right now.
Well, that's a funny thing, because I saw a picture once Adam posted on LinkedIn or something, and it showed his legs, and I'm like, oh, you actually have legs. I've never seen
funny, isn't it? Good old Zoom.
You're just like, you know, little.
This is all we're used to.
Yeah.
We're like, who knows? Who knows? It's just funny. But anyways, if you stayed around, thank you so much for listening. I'll throw to Amanda for the formal close, I suppose.
Yeah. So yeah, like Adam said, if you made it this far, we really appreciate you listening. We hope that you gained something from it, and we would love to hear what that was. If you want to leave us a comment and let us know, or you can shoot us an email at cheerstoNotSettling@gmail.com, or you can find us on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to find us. And all those links are in the description. And again, you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music. You can also hop on over to Coffee, give us as little as $1 to help us keep this thing going. And with all that being said, we will say cheers to not settling.
Cheers to not settling. Bye.
Take care.